Just when I thought things couldn't get any stranger, here we are. Hello everyone, I'm Sarah from Everyday Starlet. Welcome to my channel. I make videos to inspire you to be the star of your own life. I did not anticipate making another Charlie Kirk, Erika Kirk video. The last one I made was a requested video and it got a huge response. So to anybody who watched that and found my channel through that video, welcome. For those of you that gave me positive feedback, thank you. For those of you that even gave me constructive criticism, thank you. For those who were just plain nasty, thank you for the engagement anyway. I did take some feedback and I do have notes, so maybe I can be a little bit more focused, but just to warn you, if you're new to my channel, I ramble. And before I get too far into this video, I want to go through my usual disclaimers, which a lot of people complain about, but at the end of the day, I'm not a multi-millionaire headed to billionaire status, so I can't afford a lawsuit, so I gotta do the disclaimers. First of all, I don't know anybody in this video. I don't know anybody personally. I don't know what people are like behind closed doors. I simply base my analysis on the public images and the public perception and just information that is available to everybody. And at the end of the day, what I'm talking about is rarely about the specific celebrity or public figure. It's really about the lessons that we can take into our own lives so we can have happier, healthier lives and relationships. And honestly, more the point of the video when I'm talking about the Charlie Kirk assassination and the aftermath with his wife Erika and the way things have been playing out. My main goal here is not to trash anybody. I know some people thought I was trashing a widow in my last video. My goal is never to just be mean for the sake of being mean or to be nasty. At the end of the day, I really want people to wake up to media manipulation, to the way that people in the public image can mold perception to make you think that things are a certain way when they really aren't. I really just make this because I want people to open up their eyes and question things. I might be wrong about some things. You might be right or wrong about some things. At the end of the day, I just want people to use their discernment, use their intuition, and just realize that not everything that everybody's showing you is 100% truth. So if you get nothing else from this video, that's the main goal. But I am going to talk about a few other topics. A lot of things that people brought up in the comments of my last video about the Charlie Kirk assassination, which I will link to this one. If you want to go back and watch that. I made that video at the point in time when Erika Kirk had just done her first public speech, like in Charlie Kirk's podcasting space, I guess it was, where she kind of first came out and gave her first speech, and how I thought that speech felt a little off. Since then, there has been a memorial for him, and Erika has done some podcast interviews, and I had a lot of people that wanted me to review the memorial. I did not watch the whole memorial, but I did go back and watch just Erika's speech that I'm gonna touch on some topics. I also had people request that people like literally were like, I bet you won't analyze her podcast interview that she did like on the Charlie Kirk show after his passing. I'm gonna review it. I did also go back and watched a Charlie Kirk podcast episode that he did with Erika where they did like a Q&A to analyze that, and I did do a little bit of online research beyond that. So like I said in my last video, I was not a huge Charlie Kirk fan. I did not watch a ton of his content. When his content would come up in, just sort of in my feed and random clips and things like that, some things I agreed with, some things I didn't agree with. To clarify, because I know some people in my last video wanted me to clarify like what of his content I agreed with and what of his content I didn't agree with. And again, I didn't dive into it deeply. So when I had people say that he was, racist or white supremacist or things like that, I did not watch enough of his content to make any kind of conclusion when it comes to that stuff. When it comes to content of his that I agreed with and disagreed with, he had a viral clip going around saying that he believed that men should always pay on dates. Absolutely agree with. I did also see a clip going around where he said that he did not believe that the number of women who had been SA'd in this country was accurate because he believed that most women were lying, and that I absolutely do not agree with. So honestly, something like that is enough for me to be like, don't really want to know any more about his content. I know people can say it was out of context, but it was enough for me to just be like, don't resonate with him. I also do want to point out that a lot of people, because I tried to keep my last video very bipartisan, I tried to stay as very neutral as possible in that video, but like, I'm human. It was weird to have a lot of people like try to guess my political beliefs, and most of you were wrong. So maybe I did a really good job of hiding my biases, or maybe I overcompensated because I was trying to stay on bias. I don't know, but I have videos where I have talked about some of my political beliefs and things like that are not my most popular videos, but if you really need to know what my political ideologies are, then it's not like I've been secretive about it. I just don't really want to include too much of that to like paint my analysis of this situation. But I will say I did spend a good amount of time, I'd say maybe several years ago, really diving into a lot of political content creators, political commentators, and things like that. A lot of them that were more right-wing. I gotta be honest with you, Charlie Kirk was barely on my radar. It's possible I'm not in his age demographic because his age demographic was more college kids. I am very long out of college age, so that's possibly it. It's also possibly because I'm not a huge fan of that like sit down kind of debate style that he did, as far as like, you know, sitting down on college campuses and debating with college kids. So a lot of times, like, if his content came up in my feed, I would scroll past it because it just wasn't something that I was particularly drawn to. But I will say that, again, I was actively seeking out a lot of political content creators and things like that at a certain period of time, and Charlie Kirk and Turning Point were not at the forefront of that. I had a lot of people that said that, well, that must mean that I was some kind of radical leftist. I would actually argue that probably most radical leftists would be a lot more familiar with Charlie Kirk and his content, because a lot of them would be obsessed with arguing with him, debating with him, trolling his content and things like that. So the fact that I wasn't familiar with his content, it might mean I'm not a radical right-wing person, but I don't think it means that I'm a radical left-wing person. In fact, I wouldn't call myself a radical either one. Full disclosure, if I were to label my political ideology, I would say I'm probably more libertarian than anything else. I'm not particularly religious, which might be another reason why Charlie Kirk's content wasn't necessarily at the forefront, because that's just not necessarily my wheelhouse. I'm a lapsed Catholic, so I don't judge anybody for having religion in their life, or anybody who wants to follow organized religion. At this point in my life, it's just not for me, but I don't have a problem with it. But it's possible that that's why that content wasn't necessarily coming into my view. So I know my intro is already longer than anybody cares about, so I'm just gonna get into this. A few topics that came up from my last video that I wanted to address. I did talk about Erika's looks in my last video and some of the things about her having work done. A lot of people argued that Erika Kirk didn't look like she'd had any work done. I'm sorry, if you look at her pageant photos and you look at her now and you think that she hasn't had some kind of work done, then I think obviously the normalization of these procedures and people being blind to them is actually more serious than I even thought it was. I don't think that you can actually look at her pageant photos and then look at her now and think that there hasn't been something. I'm wearing a turtleneck now just because I wanted people to focus, and it seemed like people were so horribly offended by the little bit of cleavage I had in my last video. I find it very ironic that people, and I think this is particularly women, who are very religious, you can have whatever religious belief you want, but if you're very religious, when you start surgically altering the body that God gave you, I think that feels a little hypocritical. I mean, again, unless there's some kind of like medical necessity, if you're just like changing your nose because you don't like your nose, it's like you don't like the nose that God gave you. Are you trying to say he made a mistake? I just find that kind of hypocritical, and especially when I get people from that same religious point of view that start shaming me and telling me I should cover up because I'm showing too much cleavage, when it's like, why should I have to cover up what God gave me? If God made the body and he made me the way he made me, shouldn't I be proud of how he made me? Again, it's a hypocrisy, and I realize it's a delicate subject, but at the end of the day, I find that very poignant. I did also notice in the interview that I saw with Charlie and Erika that I went back and watched, Erika was talking about like what women can do to attract a partner and things like that, and she was dancing around it, but she was very much talking essentially about women trying to make themselves look better. She was trying to make it sound like she wasn't coming out and saying that, but she kind of was. And then she made a comment about, she said, be grateful for the body God gave you, which I find ironic when it comes to someone who's clearly had work done. A lot of people in the comments of my last video were like, you're just jealous, which I think is weird that you would say I was jealous for calling out very obvious plastic surgery when I haven't had that surgery. Why would I be jealous of somebody that had work done? That just doesn't make any sense. And also accusing someone of being jealous of a widow is really weird too. I did see some comments of people saying like, oh, I think women would be more sympathetic to Erika Kirk if she wasn't so pretty, if she wasn't so gorgeous. I don't think that's true at all. I mean, you know, I get it. Like, there are some people that just don't like attractive women, and it is what it is. But let's be real, Vanessa Bryant's pretty easy on the eyes, and most people were giving her all the sympathy in the world. So I don't think that this is a looks thing, but I do think that Erika Kirk has not presented herself as we would see a widow. Look back at photos of, because Erika Kirk is kind of almost playing this like Jackie Kennedy role. If you look back at Jackie Kennedy and Ethel Kennedy and how they looked when their husbands passed, even, yeah, I've seen some people, which I think this is like I think this is crazy, but I've seen some people comparing Charlie Kirk to Martin Luther King, and I do not agree with that comparison at all. But if you look at pictures of Coretta Scott King, like at Martin Luther King's funeral, there's a difference there. There's a big difference in that. I realize that those were a different time period, but there's a difference there, and I would go back and look at those things. It's very telling. I did mention that I thought it was a strange choice for Erika Kirk to be wearing white. She wore white not only in her first speech that she gave, but also at the memorial service. She also chose a white pantsuit, which somebody pointed out to me that she wore a white pantsuit, and it is interesting. You know, I don't necessarily think that women have to wear dresses, but like things like, you know, weddings and funerals, women wearing dresses is much more traditional. Again, I'm basing this on a very Americanized tradition. I realize in other cultures, different colors mean different things, but I'm basing this on American culture because this happened in America. I understand there were a lot of people that said they felt like, okay, well, the white is symbolizing like it's angelic, it's hope. It was her choice. But the white pantsuit, the way she was moving, the way she was acting and everything, it gave girl boss and not grieving widow. For me, some of that was timing. If she had come forward a few months from now, she decided to do like a new CEO relaunch of Turning Point, like keeping in mind her husband's memory, but moving forward, and she wanted that like white pantsuit look for angelic, new hope, whatever, fine. This soon, though, again, white was a choice, but the white pantsuit was giving girl boss. Like I said in my last video, I felt like it was giving the king is dead, long live the queen. That was the vibe. And I'm gonna get into a little bit more about her in that aspect of things, but I just wanna kind of touch on a few things about kind of her look. I did have a lot of people say that wearing all the rings was very distracting. I did notice that. You know, I didn't at first, and I don't know if it really would have shut it out at me as much, but there were a lot of people pointing it out. Some people were saying that the rings had different symbols to them and things like that. I'm not that familiar with that kind of symbolism or anything. I did think that wearing that much jewelry and that many rings was a little bit excessive. Like she had her cross on. A lot of rings was a lot. But I did see a clip. I didn't see the whole interview, but there was like a sit-down conversation with Erika and Charlie Kirk where she was wearing what looked like a lot of jewelry. So I don't know if maybe that's like a thing that she does, and maybe having the rings on, I don't know. It could have been a coping mechanism for her, just to give her the benefit of the doubt. I don't know. Some people were saying that the rings had certain symbols, and I don't really know all those symbols and all that symbolism and stuff. I'm gonna get into some of the conspiracy theories a little bit later. You know, if you think the rings were tied to a conspiracy theory, that's fine. I'm not saying they are or they aren't, but I did think that wearing the excessive rings while she was talking did seem excessive. I do find it interesting. I justified in my last video Erika Kirk wearing the full glam in the initial speech that she gave online, because I know for me personally, when I have to do something stressful or I have to speak in front of an audience or something, I find like sitting down at my makeup table and applying my makeup to be very soothing for me. It helps me focus. It kind of eases my anxiety. Like for me, I find that beneficial. I don't know if she did her own makeup or if she had a makeup person. I don't know anything about that, but I can give that some of the benefit of the doubt. I do find it interesting that she chose to wear a lot of makeup in her first speech that she made online. She chose to wear a lot of makeup in her speech at the memorial service, but then when she went to do her first podcast interview on the Charlie Kirk show, she wore a lot less makeup. I'm sure she had some, but like she wore a lot less makeup. And it was funny how I had people like, well, now she's back to wearing no makeup or less makeup. Are you happy with that? Well, it's like, you know, how much makeup she wears is her choice. The perception that a lot of people had was that a grieving widow would probably not wear as much makeup as she had been wearing. I feel like each of her speeches and appearances, at least the 3 that she's made so far as of filming this, I kind of feel like she's almost been given feedback from each one and like adjusted to the public perception a little bit. Like the first speech she gave was much more like angry, like, you know, you lit a fire in this widow and this and that, whatever. And I don't think that was received very well. So then in her memorial speech, she was more like it's about forgiveness and things like that and whatever, but she was still all glammed up. A lot of people commented about that, so then now she's doing this other podcast and it's like, okay, now I'm gonna choose to go more natural. It kind of almost feels like she's adjusting based on the public perception. You could argue that, you know, maybe she's trying to read the audience. That's valid, but it does start to feel like she's just pandering. Like she's starting to pander to the audience as opposed to being genuine. Again, there's no definitive answer to this. And again, I don't know what's going on in her head. I don't know what's going on in her heart. I'm just talking about the perception. I'm talking about how this looks from the outside. And from the outside, it's not looking very genuine. And I do think that that's like overwhelmingly what people are feeling at this point. Now, I did not watch the whole memorial service. I've heard it was like 5 hours. Some people said it was 6 hours. I don't know. I watched Erika Kirk's speech. I've seen a few clips here and there, some other speeches, but I did not watch the whole thing. I mean, that was not a memorial service. It wasn't. Whatever side of the political aisle you're on, whatever you thought of Charlie Kirk going into this, that was not a memorial service. That was a political rally. That was a Republican National Convention. Maybe that was what Charlie Kirk wanted. I do feel like if that's really what he wanted, like if that was what he laid out and asked for, I kind of feel like it should be something that somebody comes out and says, because it's strange. It was really odd to have this like memorial service and have it be this political rally. I also, like I said in my last video, I was not super familiar with Charlie Kirk's platform before. Just based on what little I had seen, I knew he was Christian, I knew he was conservative, I knew he liked to go to college campuses and argue with college students. I didn't know that much about him. Since then, and a lot of people that have tried to come to my content to tell me more about Charlie Kirk, it became overwhelmingly clear that a big part of Charlie Kirk and Turning Point, and a big part of this message, was really melding Christianity with politics, with conservative politics, the right-wing Republican Party specifically. I don't judge anybody's religion. Whatever your religion is, I think it's a personal decision. But religion and politics are supposed to be separate. And I have to say, just in watching Erika Kirk's speech, which felt like a sermon, which I find ironic because I don't know if in her, I mean, I'm not as familiar. I'm more familiar with the Catholic religion because that's what I grew up with. And I also grew up in the Northeast. So where I grew up, you were either Catholic, Jewish, or an atheist. So I'm not super familiar with different types of Christian religions, but in a lot of them, women aren't necessarily supposed to be the ones giving the sermons. I don't know specifically about the one that, you know, Erika and Charlie Kirk were a part of, but Erika Kirk's speech felt a lot like a sermon, which is fine for memorial service. It's not really appropriate for a political rally. And the fact that this memorial service felt more like a political rally because Trump's whole administration was all a part of it, but it also felt like this push for religion and Christianity. I'm a big separation of church and state person. You know, I think you have whatever religion you want, whatever politics you want, but they really should be separate. And again, I don't even think because Charlie Kirk was a big supporter of, you know, Trump and Trump's campaign and things like that, you know, Trump speaking at a Charlie Kirk Memorial, or even Trump sending a representative from his administration, whether it be Vance or somebody else, I don't think that's strange at all. Having the whole administration there, that felt weird. And the fact that the whole thing became like this big Trump political rally. And again, this is nothing to do with whether or not you're a Trump fan or not. I don't care about that. From the outside looking in, that was weird. It didn't feel like a memorial, but yet it was weaving in this Charlie Kirk's religious aspects and the sermons, and that push for the Christian and the political conservative stuff to meld it together. Again, if you in your personal life want to do that, if you're a Christian and you're a conservative, and you know what your religious beliefs are tied into your political beliefs, your choice. But the government is not supposed to be putting religion into it. That's where I really felt like this started to get weird. I understand Charlie Kirk was a public figure. I don't think he was as famous as everybody's trying to pretend that he was. You know, I kind of knew who he was, but I barely knew who he was. And again, like, I was somebody who was like actively following a lot of like political commentators and political content for a while, and he was kind of barely on my radar. So the way that the government and a lot of people are acting as if Charlie Kirk was like the most famous political commentator in the world, I think that's strange. But he was a public figure, and I acknowledge that. A lot of people were like, to call him just a podcaster or just an influencer is insulting. He was. I mean, he was a successful one. I won't lie and say that he wasn't a successful one, but his entire job was to influence people. I mean, that was his job. You know, he obviously was successful at it. He built a company and has a lot of followers, and you know, he's been very successful with it, but he is an influencer. Like, let's be real. You know, he was not a politician. He's not some kind of a military hero or anything. He was a podcaster and influencer. That's what he did. You know, you can say he was great at it if you agree with him, or, you know, even if you adamantly disagreed with him. He obviously did his job at stirring something up in you, but at the end of the day, that's what he was. Having a public memorial, I don't think is strange at all. I understand. But filling a football stadium and having the entire Trump administration there and everything, especially because Charlie Kirk wasn't a politician. He wasn't in the administration, at least not officially, unless there was something else going on behind the scenes that we're not privy to. And if there was, they're doing a really bad job of hiding that there was some kind of connection there. Like, I feel like there has to be something more to this than just what we're being told in order for this to make any sense whatsoever. I don't necessarily know what that is, and I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there. I'm gonna get into some conspiracy theories and touch on a few things, but you know, aside from that, because a lot of those things are not necessarily confirmed, but there had to be something else going on. I don't think that having a public memorial is unusual. One of the things that really was an overwhelming comment that I got on my last video about the Charlie Kirk assassination, and a lot of people after they watched the memorial service watched my video, and I had like the same comment that kept coming up and coming up and coming up. And maybe this is just the demographic of people that happen to find my video, but if that's you, then this message is for you. It seems to me like there's a lot of people that are mourning the loss of Charlie Kirk. I'm not a fan of people having like parasocial relationships with celebrities and things like that. However, if a celebrity or public figure is kind of a part of your regular life, part of your regular routine, you regularly listen to their podcasts, or you regularly watch them on TV or something like that, even if you hate watch, like even if you watch because you hate what they have to say and you want to argue with them or you want to troll them or something like that or whatever, like, you know, even if it's not a positive thing, or maybe it is a positive thing or something, but if they're a regular part of your life and then they're gone, especially in a very tragic way, like it's a very final way of like them passing on, it's normal to feel a loss. It's normal to feel like you need to mourn the loss of that. That's completely normal, and I want you to know that's okay. And the point of having a public memorial for someone who was a public figure is so that the general public of people who did follow this person, who did consume their content, can mourn the loss of them not being a regular part of their life anymore. And I think that's a beautiful thing to do. But the overwhelming message that I've been seeing from people online is that a lot of people, Charlie Kirk was a part of their life, a lot of people that felt like they needed to mourn the loss of Charlie Kirk watched the memorial service and didn't come away from it feeling like they had mourned the loss. A lot of them, from my interpretation of what a lot of people have been saying, like the feedback I've been getting, is that a lot of people are feeling really uneasy about it. A lot of them are feeling like the way that this memorial was handled, the way that Erika Kirk is acting, the way that the government is acting, the way that a lot of people around this are acting is feeling very suspicious. Things are feeling very off, and they're feeling guilt for feeling that way. And I think that that's inhibiting people to properly mourn and grieve the loss of this public figure that they felt like was part of their life. To me, that's the most heartbreaking part of the whole thing, you know, is to have this big over-the-top memorial service, but then the people that really felt like they needed to grieve the loss of a public figure that they looked to, that they felt like was a part of their life, they aren't able to fully grieve that. I don't know if this will help at all, but if it does, and I hope it does, then I would like to just give you permission to grieve. I still think it's a good idea to listen to your discernment, listen to your intuition. If things are off, they probably are off. But it's also valid to maybe put a pin in that for a second and just let yourself grieve. However that needs to be, like whether you need to just cry it out, or whether you need to go out and sit in nature and just meditate. Maybe you need to go to church and pray, like whatever it is that you need to do in order to feel that grief and move it through your body, honor that. And I hope that by me saying that, anybody that feels like they're blocked to that, it just gives you permission to do it. Honestly, that goes for if you love Charlie Kirk, that goes for if you hated Charlie Kirk and you're feeling mixed emotions because maybe you love to watch him because you love to hate on him. I mean, and now I could see where somebody in that situation might feel like a conflict of like, you know, how do I grieve the loss of something that was in my life that was frustrating me, but you know, maybe you really liked being frustrated by it, you know what I mean? Like, I think that those things are all valid. For me, the most heartbreaking part of this whole memorial / rally like spectacle that happened that I think was very odd and very uncomfortable is I think there are a lot of people out there that just, they're feeling a mixture of guilt and of loss and of confusion, and that this memorial service really didn't give people the proper outlet to grieve that I think a lot of people needed. And that might have been by design. Honestly, I mean, that might be because they really want to keep people engaged in the content. They want to get people riled up. They want to get people donating money, which again, I stand by donating money to a bunch of millionaires. Weird. But yeah, I would like to give you permission to mourn. So I really hope that helps you, because I was seeing that comment over and over and over again of people like, I was such a fan of Charlie Kirk. I loved his content, but I feel like this whole situation is off. I feel like I'm guilty, and I'm really upset with myself for feeling this way. And please, please forgive yourself for feeling that way and let yourself mourn properly. You can go back to feeling suspicious, and I think you should, because I think a lot of this stuff is very suspicious, but please allow yourself a chance to grieve, because keeping yourself in that, like sitting in that guilt, is not gonna help. It's not gonna help the situation. So I would just like to give you that permission if that helps you at all. Because I honestly do always want my content to be helpful. I do want to touch on a couple conspiracy theories that have come up. Look, I love a good conspiracy theory. I love falling down rabbit holes. I spent most of 2020 in rabbit holes. Like, and my stance on conspiracy theories is this. I have yet to find a conspiracy theory that, no matter how bizarre it was, that upon doing a little bit of research, I wasn't always convinced that the conspiracy theory was true, but I always ended up understanding why people believed that conspiracy theory. Even if I was like, I don't think that's true, I totally got why some people did. And I will also say, I have never met a conspiracy theory in my life that, even if I'm like, I don't really think that that's happening, or I don't really think that's true, I've never met one that if it happened tomorrow, like if it was confirmed tomorrow, I would be shocked. Like, I don't really think that like JFK Jr. is actually still alive, like faked his death and is hiding behind the scenes this whole time and is gonna show up to save us all. But if that happened tomorrow and he showed up like, hey guys, not really dead, I'm really here, wouldn't shock me. It really wouldn't shock me. So that's my general stance on conspiracy theories. So I'm not going to dive into too many. By all means, I've had a lot of people that have thrown out a lot of conspiracy theories in my comments on my last video, and honestly, I love to read them. I don't really want to assume any of them are true, because there is so much information out there. Some that has been proven to be false, and some that, you know, there really just isn't enough evidence to know whether it's true or false. But there is a ton of misinformation going around about the whole Charlie Kirk assassination and the whole thing and everything like that. I do want to address a couple of them though. First one that is debunked, and again, I do agree the whole situation is suspicious. I'm not here to defend what's going on, because I do think it's weird and suspicious, but there is a conspiracy theory I've been seeing going around that I do want to debunk, because I don't think it's true, and I'm rarely somebody that just is like, yeah, this conspiracy theory is false. The hand symbol that Erika Kirk gave after she hugged Trump at the memorial service, the memorial rally, was not a devil symbol. It was sign language for I love you. A quick Google search will actually tell you the difference between the sign language of I love you and what the devil symbol, hand symbol, means. It was not giving devil horns. So, I mean, look, again, I don't know what's in her heart. I'm not getting genuine from her, so I'm not trying to defend her, but I do think it would be really weird for her to give a whole speech that felt like a sermon all about Jesus and her Christianity and all this kind of stuff, and then all of a sudden give like devil horns. Like, that doesn't really line up. Again, that is a conspiracy theory that I think we need to debunk. I don't necessarily think that that means that, you know, there isn't some suspicious stuff going on, but I don't think she was actually giving devil horns at the memorial service. There's a lot going around about Erika Kirk and suspicions of child trafficking activity going on in Romania and stuff. From my general research on this, there is nothing that is hardcore proof of this as far as I know. If something changes, you know, I mean, I'm open to that. However, I do want to point out to the people who have been in my comments and the people online who have been talking about Erika Kirk and her possible ties to child trafficking and Romania, if you were also someone who supports Candace Owens, I want you to take a long, hard look in the mirror and ask yourself why you still support a woman who is continuing to support two brothers who have ties to sex trafficking in Romania, in the Tate brothers. I don't know if the Erika Kirk thing is true or if it's not, But I want people to really get a grasp on, you're either for child trafficking or against it. You're either for sex trafficking or you're against it. You really can't pick and choose who you're going to support when they do it and who you're going to denounce when they do it. I don't want to hear people going after Erika Kirk for possible connections to this if you're still supporting the Tate brothers, and by default Candace Owens for supporting them. And I have a whole video where I go into Candace Owens and her hypocrisy and the analysis I did on her and those kind of things. And I'm not saying that everybody is in that situation. I mean, some people are absolutely just against it completely, but I do think that it's important to remember, if you, just because you don't like someone and you start mixing up like, oh, let's accuse this person of being like a trafficker, but yet you support somebody else who either is a trafficker or who actively supports a trafficker, you need to be careful of that. I found it interesting that a lot of people were talking about the fact that Erika Kirk was, and I want to clarify, she was a Miss Arizona USA. So there are two different types of pageants. There's the Miss USA pageant and there's the Miss America pageant. Trump owned the Miss USA pageant and Erika Kirk won Miss Arizona. So she was Miss Arizona USA and then she competed in the Miss USA pageant. So there's a lot of people that are like, oh my God, Trump knew her and this and that. And some people have said that she worked for Trump, and I don't know. Like, I don't really know what all the connections were. I can say, first of all, the people that are saying, oh, well, she was a pageant girl. I did compete one time in a Miss Massachusetts USA pageant. And I'm sure that each of the regional pageants is probably different, but I can speak to my own experience with that. At the regional level, and I imagine probably each state might vary a little bit, but on the regional level, when you're competing for your state pageant, Trump isn't involved in that at all. Like, I have to be honest with you, when I competed in the Miss Massachusetts USA pageant, I didn't even know that Trump owned it at that point. Like, it wasn't like a huge thing. Like, they didn't talk about it. Like, you didn't have to like take an oath to worship Trump or anything like that. Like, he was not involved in the actual regional pageants. And it might vary from place to place or things like that, but my general observation was that a lot of girls that do the Miss USA pageant, which is not Miss America, is like you have to do like charity work and have a talent and all that kind of stuff. Miss USA is really just like a straight up beauty pageant. Like, you don't have to have a talent portion. You know, I don't even think you actually even get interviewed on stage, or maybe you do in the finals, but like, it's pretty much just like swimsuit, evening gown. It's not that formal. As you move up in the pageant, there's probably a lot more complicated things, but just on like a regional level, a lot of people that do the pageant, it's their first time doing it. Or some will start as teens and then they might, you know, move their way up to like adult category or something like that. But like, you don't find a lot of girls that like started as toddlers and then like worked their way up to the system. So I'm sure there are some people that do that, but like the Miss USA pageant, from my observation, doesn't attract a lot of girls who were like doing pageants since the time they were like 3. So I've seen a lot of people that are justifying Erika's actions and being like, well, she's a pageant girl. It's not unusual for someone to do like the Miss USA pageant and not have a ton of like pageant experience, and you don't get like a ton of training when you do that. I can tell you, I will say, one of the things that I did notice about pageants is a lot of those girls are really good at being two-faced. A lot of those girls, when they step on stage, they are like sweet and angelic, and then backstage they would make a trucker blush. So that was my observation. As far as the memorial, and I want to touch on a few things about the actual assassination and the Tyler Robinson situation. There's been some controversy around Erika Kirk forgiving, she kept saying that young man. She never said Tyler Robinson's name, which I think is significant. But she's obviously heavily implying that it was Tyler Robinson that committed the crime and that she forgave him. Some people are arguing that like, oh, well, that's the Christian way. And some people are like, no, it was too soon. I mean, I don't really think it's for us to decide when it's, you know, when she's ready to forgive him. I can understand her talking about the road to forgiveness, because forgiveness is something that's for you. However, the thing that I think that makes it a little bit too soon is the fact that he hasn't even been to trial yet. We don't even really know what is actually going on in that situation. You know, this is not like a George Floyd and Derek Chauvin situation where like the incident was on camera, you know what I mean? Like, it's, their faces are there, like we know, and even then there's speculation as to what the actual cause of death was, and you know, the questions of fentanyl and all this kind of, and I'm not going to get into a whole conversation about that, but like, even when it's like there on camera and you see what happens with people's faces there's still some speculation, right? In the Charlie Kirk situation, it's all speculation now, and you know, Tyler Robinson may be guilty, he may not be guilty, I don't know. He has not been to trial yet. And to offer forgiveness, I understand if Erika Kirk wants to offer forgiveness for whoever did this, because that's for her internally. But the implication that we already have the guy and that he's already guilty is not really how our system works in America. And I think that we need to be very careful of that. And he deserves his day in court like any American would deserve their day in court, to actually figure out what the truth is. And we may never know what the truth is, and I do really think that the powers that be are probably going to make this look however they want it to look, but I think we as Americans need to be very careful of just jumping to the conclusion that this man is guilty, that he acted on his own, and that all the evidence has not been gathered yet. Like, I mean, we are not privy to all the evidence. Like, I think we just need to be very careful of jumping to this conclusion. And again, I understand that for Erika and for her religion and everything, and I understand why finding forgiveness is important to her, and I think that's all valid. But again, it does feel too soon, and it does feel like, again, she didn't say his name, but she was subtly implying that they already knew the guy, they already had him in custody, and that this was a clear-cut case. Not yet. You know what I mean? And again, he might be guilty, he might not, I don't know. We may never actually know the truth, but like, I think we need to be really careful of jumping to that conclusion. And that was where I felt like the too soon thing was coming into play. I think it would have made a little bit more sense if she had kept that young man out of it, so it wasn't like this like assumption that we know that this person is automatically the guilty party. And also maybe if she talked about the road to forgiveness, because I think for a lot of people, they're not ready for forgiveness. She might be, and she might be working towards that, and more power to her if she needs to find that. But again, the forgiveness angle did feel a little bit off, just because, again, we don't even actually know the whole details of this case. Now, the whole thing with the Tyler Robinson thing, it's been getting so convoluted in the media, and I'm actually not going to dive into a ton of this stuff, but I actually just watched a video. It's on the Behavioral Arts YouTube channel with Spidey, who does like behavioral analysis and things like that. He has a whole video on Tyler Robinson and his arraignment, I think it was, and the text messages, and the way that the media has been manipulating the way they are presenting the story. Like, it was very eye-opening, and I'm not going to dive into that here, but I highly recommend you check out that video. I think if you just look up like the behavioral arts and Tyler Robinson, you will find it. Like, the way that the news media has been manipulating some of the videos of him, the text message conversations that have been revealed that just don't make a lot of sense. I highly recommend you check out that video. I'm very big on media manipulation and things like that, but this video is going to be too long if I dive into those things, and I really thought that the behavioral arts did a phenomenal job explaining that, so I highly recommend you check out that video. Now look, a lot of what I do is just tune into my intuition and my discernment, which I've found over the course of my lifetime to be very powerful and usually really accurate. When I was watching Erika Kirk's speech, particularly when she was talking about forgiveness and, you know, forgiving that young man and things like that, and when they panned to the audience and you know, Erika was crying. There's debate as to whether or not people think that she was really crying or not. There were a lot of people in the audience that were crying. Alarm bells started going off in my head, and it reminded me very much of an instance from my past. And I just thought I would share the story because I got the same feeling, even though these are two separate situations. I went to this acting convention many years ago in LA. It was this big convention with all these different like agents and managers and things like that, and people went and they did all kinds of different types of auditions. It was for like modeling and acting, and they had like runway shows, and they had like monologue auditions, and you know, reading different commercials. I got an award for my TV commercial beauty category, by the way, but anyway, totally separate subject. There was a girl who was there for the convention, staying in the hotel, because most of the people there for the convention stayed in the hotel where the convention was being held, and she was very severely disabled, walking with crutches, and she had a hard time getting around. She obviously was not completely verbal. People were constantly making accommodations for her. You always kind of noticed her around the convention and stuff. Something to me felt off about the whole thing, but whatever. You know, honestly, like the whole thing was just so overwhelming that I was just kind of like just trying to figure out like where I was supposed to be at what time. Was what it was. The auditions were kind of like these big cattle call things where you got a number and you were lined up by your number and stuff like that. So while you were waiting in line, you got to see the people before you doing their audition. This girl who was disabled got up on the stage and started trying to give a monologue and was struggling through it. It was just painful to watch. Now in my mind, I was like, something's not right here. Something is not right here. I don't know what this is. Like, alarm bells were going off in my head. This did not feel genuine. I'm looking around the room. People are crying. People are like looking at her and they're just like, oh my God, yes. Like, keep going. No, keep going. You can do this. Like literally everybody in the room is like feeding into this. And I'm just standing there thinking, In the middle of the monologue, she breaks the character and goes into like, clearly she's not disabled and is just a regular ordinary person, doesn't need crutches, can speak perfectly normal, everything. Like, she just breaks the whole character to try to sell everyone what a great actress she was, and then goes back into character at the end of the monologue and like leaves the stage like as the disabled person, and everybody is like in shock. And in my mind, I'm like, I knew it, that I knew that something was off. And it's not that she did a bad job of selling it, because obviously a lot of people believed it. But for me, the alarm bells were going off like something is not right here. I don't know if anyone signed her. Like, I don't know. I have no idea what happened with that. I understand that this is an acting convention and she was acting and playing a role and decided to, you know, be really method actress and like sell this role. Personally, I thought it was like super deceptive. Like, I just thought like, this is just manipulative. This is beyond acting. This is literally just trying to like manipulate a bunch of people. And personally, anybody with that level of like, I mean, it's a con artist is what that is. I just remember being like shocked that more people didn't feel like this was off. Right? So I like to think that my discernment and my intuition is pretty good. When I was watching Erika Kirk give her memorial rally speech and she starts talking about this young man, I will forgive him. And they're scanning the audience and they're showing these people in the audience that are like crying and like, yes, and this and that. I had those same alarm bells go off in my head. Like, it was like that moment, which again, that other audition, that other instance happened. I mean, that, oh my God, that was 2001. So we're talking more than 20 years ago. I have not thought about that moment in years, and that was the thing that came to my head. My discernment is usually pretty good, and alarm bells were going off in my head. And again, I don't know what's in her heart. I don't know what's in her head. I know that what she's doing is a performance. It's performative. No idea, again, what she's going through. And a lot of people are like, you can't judge a grieving widow. I'm not judging a grieving widow for how she's feeling, because I don't know what she's feeling. I don't know what she does at the end of the day when she goes home, and that's not my business. I'm judging what she is doing publicly that is very performative. And it's also very exploitive. We're talking about a woman who is making millions. I guarantee you she's on a path to be a billionaire with this. She is using this opportunity and exploiting every minute of it to grow the business, to grow her name and her fame. She's exploiting it. Now, I've seen a lot of people that are like, oh, his movement was important, and maybe it was to you, and people like, is she just supposed to let it die off? No, of course not. She can continue it on. That's her choice to do. But you can't deny that she's not exploiting this for money. Like, she absolutely is. I mean, the charities that are being set up to donate to this woman whose husband was worth like 12 million, so she's getting that. I've seen some people say that her estimated net worth was like 2 million already. I'm sure he had a life insurance policy. She's now CEO of a huge business that is now like, their profits are increasing. And again, you can agree with it all you want as to whether or not you support that company, and that's your choice whether you want to support it or whether you don't want to support it. But I do find it interesting. She's profiting off of this. Like, she's massively profiting off of her husband's murder. If this were any other situation, the person who profited the most off of a person's death would be the prime suspect. Also, spouses are usually the prime suspect. I mean, again, no idea if she had anything to do with it. I don't. I'm just saying, if in any other situation we would be side-eyeing the wife, ask yourself why you're not side-eyeing the wife in this situation. Again, none of these are like a definitive, this is a yes, this is a no. I just want people to use their discernment and ask themselves some of these questions, because I think these questions are important. Again, even in her speech at like the memorial rally, I thought it was very interesting when she made the statement that like, your wife is not your slave, your wife is not your employee. It's like, well, not anymore, because now she's CEO. And then she announces like in the memorial speech that she is the new CEO of Turning Point, to a standing ovation at her husband's memorial. Like, take politics and take religion out of the situation for a second. You have a corporation that has a CEO, and the CEO is the face of the corporation. Say they make socks, and their CEO is Mr. Sock. or something. And he's the face of the company. And he dies tragically and suddenly. Now, obviously, when you have employees in this company and their livelihood depends on their paycheck they get from this company and things like that, it's normal and understandable to internally be letting the company know, like, look, we have things on track. We're going to appoint a new CEO. Business is going to continue. Your jobs are still there. That's all normal. It's even normal to maybe just release a statement on the social media, you know, of the company or something like that, to be like, you know, due to this tragedy, we want everybody to know that we are still going to continue on while we, as a stock company family, mourn the loss of our CEO. Please stick with us while we work towards continuing on their legacy, or something like that. Totally normal. And because the CEO maybe has a big popular presence, maybe you need to do a public memorial because they do have a big fan base, and you do something, not a political rally, but you do some kind of a public memorial where you honor him. But you don't talk all about the company and the new direction of the company and the new CEO. You don't have the wife get up and give a speech about how she's taken over or anything like that. That's not normal. So you do this, you have a memorial, maybe it's something public, maybe it's at like a location where people can go, or maybe it's just something that gets streamed online so that people can honor this person that they saw as, you know, a public figure, someone they followed, someone that they felt like they were invested in. All valid. Then say maybe a month or 2 months or something, maybe even 3 months later, you do a big event like, you know what, a new chapter kind of thing. You know, we're honoring the fallen leader of the past, but we are moving forward with our new CEO, and, you know, we hope to keep, you know, the same legacy alive or something like that, or whatever. And maybe you do a big event, maybe you do a big rally or something like that. Like, I feel like if this memorial / rally thing had happened in a few months' time as like a new relaunch of the company or something, I still don't think that the entire government administration should be a part of it. But like, if you wanted to do a big relaunch with Erika Kirk in her white pantsuit for hope and girl bossing and whatever, something like that, like, I think that's valid. But you didn't have the memorial. You didn't actually have a funeral. You didn't actually have a memorial. Like, you just went straight into the relaunch of the business. It feels like a cash grab. There's no other reason that you would do that except to latch on to, we don't want to lose people because we don't want to lose their money. Or to use this as a, we want to exploit this tragedy to guilt people into giving us more money, into funding this. Like, there's no other reason for doing this. Because if this company was really as big and solid, this movement was such a big deal, you could take, because I even saw when I watched the Erika Kirk podcast that she just did on the Charlie Kirk show, when one of the other people on the panel, one of the guys, I'm not familiar with their names, said like, you know, well, we took a breath and we're coming back. It's like, you didn't have enough time to breathe. Like, you haven't actually taken a breath because you just went right into doing this. Like, there was no breath. There was no moment to honor the life of, you know, this person who, whatever you thought of Charlie Kirk, he was a human being and it was a life that was lost. And they didn't even take a moment to honor that. You know, they went right into relaunching the company, and it was, I mean, it's exploitive is what it is. I mean, you can say all day that you think that their message is good, or you think that they should be getting money, or whatever you think, but they are exploiting his death. I mean, they absolutely are, for monetary gain. And you can't deny that. Whether you agree with his message or whether you don't, you have to acknowledge that they are exploiting his death for monetary gain. And, you know, it's funny because there's people that are like, well, you're making this video just to make some money. I'm gonna make a little bit of money off of this. I'm not a grieving widow who's going to be set to be a billionaire exploiting her husband's death. I'm just making a video talking about some of the things that don't add up. I mean, maybe you don't like what I'm doing, and that's fine if you don't like what I'm doing, but like, it's definitely not the same thing, let's be real. Okay, I find this really interesting. Even the news media is not handling Charlie Kirk's death the way that they normally would. Like, we know so little about Charlie Kirk's family, and people are like, they wanted to stay private, they wanted to stay behind closed doors, they didn't want to be public about this. When has the news media and like reporters that are always looking for a story ever respected people's privacy? Like, especially public figures. Like, this was a huge story and a huge deal. Like, why are reporters not digging up stuff on Charlie Kirk's family? Why are they not digging up stuff on Erika Kirk's family? I saw one People magazine article about Erika Kirk's mom, but like nothing about her dad anywhere. Like, since when do news reporters that are always digging for the scoop on things, like, I can't even find any information that he's actually having like a family funeral? And I know people are like, well, they wanted their privacy. Again, when has the news media ever respected people's privacy? Like, the news media will literally stick a camera in the face of somebody who just lost their child in a school shooting. They don't care. Like, they're looking for the scoop. So the fact that so little is known about Charlie Kirk's family and Erika Kirk's family, and it's all very like strategic, that's put out in the world, that's suspicious to me. Like, reporters are not treating this like a normal story that they're trying to get to the bottom of. They're really not, and it's really getting disturbing. I did find a People magazine article that talked about Erika Kirk's mom and her being a single mom, and which single mothers get shamed a lot in society, but Erika Kirk is the daughter of a single mother and was a girl boss. I thought there was an interesting quote from this People magazine article. Found online, you can look it up, but I'm gonna read this quote from the article. It says here, at a Young Woman's Leadership Summit in June 2025, Erika said that her mother had always taught her to take care of herself. When she met her husband, her views changed. Quote, when you meet the right man, everything shifts, everything changes, she said. When I met Charlie, that was it. I could care less about the career. Motherhood is not a pause, it's a launch pad. These are her words. Erika Kirk was apparently running a clothing line business, was a career woman, was well into her 30s when she met and married Charlie Kirk, you know, didn't start having kids until she was in her 30s. This woman was raised by a girl boss. She was working as a girl boss. She meets Charlie Kirk, all of a sudden gets married, starts a family, starts preaching that motherhood's the most important thing, that women shouldn't focus on careers, and you know, that like she shifted and changed her whole view and decided that she was going to be a wife and a mother, and that was going to be her whole thing, that career wasn't really where her focus was anymore. All of a sudden her husband's killed and she's back to girl boss, she's back to CEO. Does anybody else find that suspicious? That she conveniently went from growing up thinking like Miss Independent Woman, women have to take care of themselves, and then somehow all of a sudden in her 30s she meets Charlie and she's like, oh, everything changed, I changed my whole view. They're married, have a couple kids, and then all of a sudden he's murdered, and now she's back to the girl boss, she's back to the CEO, she's back to like, she's doing all these events, she's doing all these appearances. Where are her kids? Like, she's obviously not home with her kids in this point in time. It's like, you know, her kids who just lost their father and stuff. I mean, again, if this was anybody else's story, people would be super suspicious. This might just be survival mode for her. She might be reverting back to just what she knows and what she's familiar with. I don't judge that. My concern is the hypocrisy, the message. Did she really want the marriage and kids, or did she do that for some other reason? I don't know. I mean, but again, I think these are things that we need to start looking at, because a lot of content creators are not necessarily who they pretend to be. And I just want people to take a look at that. I just want everybody to question everything. So I had some people that wanted me to review the Erika Kirk podcast that she did on the Charlie Kirk show after the memorial rally thing. And I've touched on that a few times in this video and stuff like that. I watched it, and again, other than the fact that she was wearing less makeup and she was a little less riled up, which makes sense because she was in a more like intimate podcast environment as opposed to like in front of a, I mean, she's in front of an audience that are watching, but like it's not like on a stage like she was at the memorial. She was less performative, I will give her that, which is valid. She wore less makeup, which I kind of wonder if that wasn't some feedback that she was getting because she was wearing so much before, and she was like, oh, let's go with something more natural because people are saying I don't look enough like a grieving widow. Again, it was a lot of, you know, how they're gonna carry forward, turning point and things like that, which, I mean, I guess that's a more appropriate place to have that conversation. I don't think at his memorial service was an appropriate place to be having that conversation, but they did anyway. I still think it was too soon. Like, it's like, again, this woman is just constantly doing speeches and interviews and things like that. I know there's people that are arguing, well, she wants to keep busy, but like doing this publicly, it just doesn't look good. Like, it's not a good look for her or the company or anybody involved. So again, the Charlie Kirk show interview, I do think felt less performative than her first two speeches. So, you know, I don't know if that's just feedback she's getting, so she's trying to tone down the performance aspect, or maybe it's because she's in a different environment, so she's feeling a little bit more laid back, or, you know, because it's in front of a camera, although her first speech was in front of a camera. But, you know, I mean, again, I don't know, maybe she's just going through the stages of grief. I don't know. I stand by the fact that all three of those appearances are weird. It's weird. I don't think that as the widow that she had to be the one to jump out in front of everything and be the face of everything. I think that was a conscious choice that she made. You know, she's choosing to use this as a launching pad for fame and exploiting this for a lot of money that she doesn't need. You know, I mean, if she was widowed and left in a situation with nothing and no money and struggling and everything, then I'd be like, you know what, girl, do what you need to do. Put food on the table for your family and everything. But like, she was left in a very cushy situation. She doesn't need to be doing this. And I understand if she's still passionate about, you know, his message and she wants to carry on his message, and I understand that, that's fine. I do also think that there's a timing problem And it's feeling disrespectful. It's feeling like, okay, we're just honoring his message now. Charlie Kirk was just his message. This feels like she's dehumanizing him in a certain way. It's like, we're not really humanizing this guy. We're just using this to push an agenda. This is like, I'm just thinking this in the moment, but like, we're losing the humanity of this guy. Like, he's becoming all his message. He's becoming all of just, this was what he was pushing, and them pushing this. And again, I realize this is the public perception, but like, it's not feeling like the people closest to him are mourning the man. And I know a lot of people are saying that, well, I just wouldn't understand because of my religious whatever, or blah, blah, blah. But like, there's a humanity aspect to this. Like, he was a human being, and he's not being treated like a human being that is deceased. They're treating it as a political agenda. And I think that's a dangerous thing to get into. And I also feel like it's disrespectful to him being a human, you know, just like honoring the man as a human, and then coming around and like, after you have now honored this guy, maybe you've had an actual funeral service or an actual memorial service that isn't just a political rally. You honor the man as a human being, as a, you know, as a husband, as a son, as a father, you know, you honor that stuff. Then you go into, yes, this was his message and we're going to continue on his message. You know, if that's what you believe in. I know some people don't like his message, some people do. That's your personal decision. But yeah, it's feeling very much like we're not honoring that a human being has been killed. And maybe, yeah, I mean, there's a detachment to that seems to be happening, which I think is really scary, that we as a society have become so detached from the death of a human being. And again, I would say this about anybody, like, this is distracting from a lot. I mean, there was a woman who was like randomly killed, like just randomly stabbed on a subway, and that story has gotten completely skated under the rug. Like, there are school shootings that are happening, there's all kinds of mass shootings that are happening that are getting skated under the rug, and the humanity in those people is not really being fully acknowledged either. And again, this is not a commentary on guns, because I think that, I believe this is a mental health issue, and it's a societal issue beyond that, because again, people have always owned guns and you didn't have mass shootings that were going on and whatever. And I'm not going to get into that whole conversation, but like, this is off. I know this video is already pretty long and people don't like when I ramble. One thing I did do is I went back and watched an interview. It was on like Charlie Kirk's show with Charlie Kirk and Erika, and they were sitting down and like taking questions. So I wanted to get a little bit of a baseline of how they interacted together on camera. I did this in my Candace Owens video with some interviews that Candace did with her husband and stuff like that to kind of analyze their chemistry. So I'll just kind of run through this quickly. You can look up this video. I'm not going to use clips because I get into too many copyright issues, but you can look up video of the two of them. It was a pretty easy find. I think I looked up like Charlie Erika Kirk interview or something like that, and this was one of the first videos that popped up. Personally, and some of this is hindsight because I'm watching this now, their chemistry seemed very forced. It did not feel natural. Like, when they started to try to sound lovey-dovey, it felt forced and performative. Yeah, I was not getting like loving couple from them. Again, the act of being on camera can skew that, so no idea what they were like in their personal life, but this is just how it came across on camera. I found it very interesting that one of the first questions, now they had the questions, okay, these were questions that people had written in, they picked the questions, they read the questions, so like they had time to prepare if they needed to prepare. Like, this was not just like them sitting in front of like an interviewer just throwing questions at them and they had to answer these questions quickly. But one of the questions was something like, how long have you been married or something, and they were both like trying to figure out like when their wedding date was and what year they were married and things like that and whatever. I mean, I have a hard time remembering my wedding date, but I'm divorced now, so but they were still married. And Erika Kirk made some joke about like, it's just so hard to remember dates because then with like kids' birthdays and stuff, there's just so many dates to remember, and it's like, you have 2 kids. Like, it's just weird to me. Like, is it really that difficult for you to remember your 2 kids' birthdays and then, but also your anniversary date? Like, is that really that difficult to remember? And for someone who claims that motherhood is the most important job and that motherhood's the most important thing, that was weird to me, that like all of a sudden she couldn't remember any dates and stuff. Like, I thought that was strange. And then one of the questions was like, how did you know when you were ready to get married and when it was time to get married? And they really fluffed it off with a very like, we just knew it was time. And I gotta be honest with you, it was giving very cab light theory. Like, my cab light went on. Erika Kirk was 6 years older than Charlie Kirk. She was into her 30s. He was getting close to 30. His whole platform was about family values and, you know, Christian values and conservative values and all this kind of stuff. Yet he wasn't married yet and didn't have a family. His big thing was always always, like I've seen in other interviews and stuff, like, you know, if you wait until you're after 30 to get married, there's like, you know, less of a chance of you getting married. And if you wait until you're in your 30s to have kids, there's only a 50% chance you're gonna have kids, blah, blah, blah. Yet he was almost 30, which obviously like kind of was like, okay, now he's got to hurry up and get married. But now he meets this woman who she's already in her 30s. She's had a career. She's built a career. Well, obviously he made Erika not the statistic, because she was talking in the interview about looking for a partner and actively looking for a partner and stuff like that into her 30s. And I've heard Charlie Kirk, I don't have the clips off the top of my head, but I have heard him, one of the things that I found off-putting about him was I've heard him shame Taylor Swift for being like a cat lady without kids or whatever, like being in her 30s and not being married, not having kids and things like that. Like I've heard him in the past. It's like, well, but you married someone who's Taylor Swift's age and now has a couple kids with you. Again, the hypocrisy of that really drives me crazy. Again, they sat down to do this interview to talk about their relationship and answer questions about their relationship, and they couldn't even answer a basic question like, why did you decide to get married? Like, you couldn't come up with any reason why you loved your wife, or why, you know, you loved your husband, or like why you thought they were the one, or offer anything. I mean, because that would have been helpful for people to give them that information, but the way that they just kind of fluffed it off with like a, you know, we just knew it was time. Which is interesting because it's kind of giving a little bit of like, and I went into this in my video about Candace Owens and her husband, it's kind of giving like, okay, this was an arranged decision. This was an arranged decision that we just decided to make happen for other reasons. I don't know, and they weren't faking it very well. It's just, I actually be very interested. Anyone who's followed Charlie Kirk and can give me an unbiased opinion on this, I would be very curious to know, because somebody asked who was more conservative, Charlie or Erika, and Charlie said Erika, and Erika agreed. Charlie kind of joked that like he was practically moderate compared to Erika. I'm curious if you had been following Charlie Kirk for a while, when he started seeing Erika, when they got married and things like that, like did his content change? Like did he get more conservative? Did he get more Christian or more political or whatever? Like I'd be curious to know that. I'm not going to dive into all of his content, but I would be curious if anybody noticed if his content did change over the course of like, you know, him meeting her, getting to know her, getting into a relationship with her or anything, or if he has stayed kind of the same like level of religious and conservative type of thing. I do find it interesting that they were so quick to say that Erika was more conservative, but then Erika talked about how important it was that both people be equally yoked, yet they're kind of acknowledging that she's a lot more conservative than he is. I mean, again, I thought that was just kind of an interesting thing to note. But then it's also interesting because as they went into the conversation about gender roles, as much as Erika, they're claiming she was more conservative, she kept finding excuses like, you know, Charlie Kirk would go into, you know, kind of bashing stay-at-home dads, and then Erika was like, well, my dad was for a short time, so I don't want to seem like we're trashing stay-at-home dads. Anytime they went into the traditional gender roles, or even their conversation around submission, and I'll get into that in a minute, but like Erika there was pushback, and I don't know, like I know they said Erika was more conservative, but then as the conversation was going on, it really did feel like Charlie was giving the conservative arguments and Erika was giving the pushback. If they hadn't said that Erika was more conservative, I would have watched that interview and thought that Charlie was more conservative than Erika. I mean, maybe that's just the way that they banter, and like she was kind of doing the devil's advocate thing. I mean, I don't know. And there could be a million reasons for that, but I just found that very interesting that they were kind of trying to make it sound like she was more conservative. Again, I don't know his family background because there's so little known about his family, but the fact that she's admitted in another interview that she was raised by a single mom, her mother raised her to be like an independent woman and take care of herself, but now somehow she's so much more conservative, and she had so much pushback to some of the conservative and traditional gender roles. And not like a lot of pushback, but there definitely was moments of her pushing back on that I'm like, is she more conservative? It's kind of almost feeling like she's not, but they're trying to present it that way, which to me is odd. Like, why not just say that she's not as conservative, or that they, you know, they're both equally conservative or something like that. Like, I don't know, that just felt weird to me. Now, in my last video, I had a lot of people that argued with me that I didn't understand the concept of biblical submission. I had so many people in my comments that were trying to explain to me biblical submission, and so many of the explanations were totally different. So I'm obviously not the only one that doesn't understand biblical submission. I have a lot of videos on my channel where I talk about masculine feminine dynamics and masculine feminine energies and stuff, and even some that are tied to gender roles and things like that, although that wasn't my main focus. But you know, I have a lot of content around that. I'm not an expert on biblical submission at all. So, you know, that is not my area of expertise. Some people said I got it wrong. I wasn't really making that the focus of my last video. But when the subject of submission came up in the interview and they were talking about it and they were going back and forth on it, maybe it was just me, but Erika seemed very triggered by that word, and I felt like she was dancing around the subject in ways to justify the idea of submitting to her husband. And she was selling it, but I was feeling like she felt like a need to justify it. And the fact that she kept clarifying it with it, well, it doesn't mean that, the husband is better or worse than the wife, and it doesn't mean that anything. It just means that he takes the lead, and it just means this and that. And it's like, well, if you have a leader and follower situation, then you do kind of have someone above the other. Her explanation of it, and I encourage you to go back, just watch the interview, rewatch it maybe if you've already seen it, and just see if you can pick up the subtle clues that I don't think that Erika was as on board with the concept of submission to her husband as she was saying, or as they were pretending that she was. I felt pushback. Now, if she was raised by a single mother who taught her to be an independent woman, natural for her to have some pushback to it. Like, I'm not judging that. I just think we need to be very careful of assuming that somebody is just like, oh, submission is just a given and it should be easy and women should just do it. Even women who are choosing to have a marriage like that can still sometimes have reservations around it and can still have conflicted feelings, may not be in it 100%. They might not be totally ready to do that. There might be moments when submission doesn't feel like the right thing. We need to honor that. And that's all I'm saying. This is not about a judgment of a yes or no. And I do like the fact that in the interview, they made it very clear that the man needs to be worthy of submission, because I think that is huge. Like, that is like the biggest aspect of this. Do not just submit to any man. I'm not a big fan of the concept of submission in general, but I will say that just blind submission to anybody or anything is not smart. I also find it interesting that Erika said something about, I know women have pushback to submission because, of abusive situations, and that's not what we're talking about. And then she went into another subject. We can't ignore the abusive situations. And just because a relationship doesn't start out that way doesn't mean it won't turn that way, because particularly with men, absolute power will corrupt absolutely. So when you give a man absolute power over you, most men are going to end up abusing that power in some way because there's no consequences for it. That's where I have pushed back on the concept of the biblical submission. Yes, you have to find a man that you can trust. You have to find a man that can lead you in order to let him lead. That's incredibly important. But just saying, okay, I picked this man and in this moment I can trust him and he's shown me he's a good leader, does not mean he always will be. And when you give a man absolute power over you, he usually will unfortunately abuse that power. I have a lot of other videos going into that concept, so I'm not going to dive into that here, but it also ties into one of the things that Charlie Kirk said about he believes that men should have 100% control of the finances. I'm on board with men being providers, 100% on board with that. If women earn money, that's a choice, but I 1000% believe that men should be the providers. I don't believe that men should have complete control of the finances. I don't. Look, as someone who was financially abused, as someone who has witnessed many women get financially abused, as someone who has witnessed women who got married and believed that their husband would never financially abuse them, only to wake up years later and realize how bad the abuse was, your husband might be a wonderful man when you marry him. It only takes one addiction problem to completely wipe out a life savings. I've seen it. And this isn't like, oh, you should just pick better men. I've seen this in people close to me. In situations where you would never have thought that that was possible, it happened. So I don't believe in men having 100% control of the finances. Personally, my idea of traditional values is the man makes all the money and then the woman manages it. I believe in home economics, which means that managing the home and budgeting the home and what's needed for the home, the man brings the money back into the home, but the woman manages the home. That's my idea of traditional values. So when she manages the home, she figures out what has to get paid and she knows how much money she can allocate towards groceries or cleaning supplies or we know what the kids need or things like that. I think men make the money, women spend the money. I think that's the way that society works. Granted, women can have addiction problems too, so I do think that there's a factor. And if women are just really bad with money, if there's a woman who's really bad with money and you may need to do the finances together or things like that, there's always exceptions, but generally speaking, I think a man having total control of the finances is not a smart move. Interesting how even in this interview, and I know in a lot of other interviews, Charlie Kirk has been very big on college as a scam. Yet he married a woman who has a whole bunch of degrees. I still haven't actually figured out if she has a doctorate or if she's just in the process of getting a doctorate, but she's got quite a few college degrees. For someone whose big message is college is a scam, to marry a woman with so many degrees, a little strange. I also thought it was interesting that in this interview with Charlie and Erika, Charlie Kirk made a comment about like women are not gonna find fulfillment just like being CEO of a shoe company. Like they're gonna find it in motherhood essentially. I'm paraphrasing, but he said like CEO of a shoe company. It's my understanding that Erika Kirk's job when she met Charlie Kirk was that she was CEO of her own clothing company. Like that sounds like a deliberate dig at his wife, like while she's sitting right in front of him. Again, maybe she didn't find as much fulfillment in doing that as she did in motherhood. I don't know, but like that's for her to say. That's not for him to make that judgment. You know what I mean? Like that, in that moment, I was just like, oh, okay. And I really did feel like in their interview there was more tension. Maybe after that, I don't know, as the conversation was going, and I was like, you know what? Frankly, if I was sitting there with my husband, and I mean, I'd be pretty pissed at him. Like, I'd be like, how dare you say that about me? I mean, even if she had expressed that she wasn't finding fulfillment in that job and she was finding more fulfillment in motherhood or whatever, like that's for her to say. It's not really for him. Like that felt like a direct dig at her. And I don't know if he meant it that way or if he didn't, like that, but that's what it sounded like. I was like, okay. And then Erika went into this whole spiel about women can have careers after motherhood, but you know, while the kids are little, like it's important to focus on motherhood because you miss so many moments, and you know, once the kids are off at school, then you can focus on a career, things like that. But yet her kids are still little. She's now CEO of a company. It's not a shoe company or a clothing company, it's a bigger company. So apparently being CEO of her husband's company, well, that's a bigger deal. She's gonna find fulfillment in that. But like if it's just a shoe company or just her clothing company, she's not gonna find fulfillment in that. Seems pretty quick to move into the CEO role and become a career woman and leave her kids at home. I mean, watching that interview then and like knowing how things play out, and it's like she's talking about how, you know, you really can't find balance between work and motherhood. And look, I'll be the first to say, I don't think that it's like, I think this illusion that women can have it all is really just the pressure that women have to have it all. And we're not expecting men to have it all. We're expecting women to have it all. You know, I don't like the pressure that we put on women to have a fulfilling career and to have to be the perfect mothers and things like that. Like, I'll be the first to say that I think that balance is really difficult. But I do find it ironic that Erika Kirk is making all these statements about the importance of being home and the importance of being a mom and being a stay-at-home mom, especially when the kids are little. And Charlie Kirk is basically, you know, like, well, you're not going to find that fulfillment being CEO of a company. Now all of a sudden Erika Kirk is CEO of the company and she's doing all these interviews and all these promotions and all this kind of stuff, not home with her kids, who now don't have a father at home. I mean, I realize that, you know, things happen and things change and you got to do what you got to do. However, Erika Kirk is in the position where she could become a stay-at-home mom. Like, she has been left with enough money where she absolutely could be a stay-at-home mom and raise her kids until they were at school and then go off and have a career of her own. She's actively choosing not to. It's in direct conflict with the message that her and her husband have been preaching. Look, be a stay-at-home mom, don't be a stay-at-home mom. Have a career, have a family, whatever you choose. I don't even really believe that we're all here to lead the same path, because I think life would be boring if everybody was leading the same path. So like, I don't judge. Do what you want to do. I mean, I judge people that say like have kids but don't really want to have kids and like treat their kids like they didn't want them. Like, I judge people that do that, but like, I don't judge people for choosing to have kids, not choosing to have kids, having a career, not having a career, whatever you want to choose. I just don't like the hypocrisy. I don't like the idea of like being a career woman and having kids, but then shaming another woman for trying to have kids and a career at the same time. Especially when you have a woman who is in a financial position where she doesn't need to work, but she's choosing to, shaming a woman who's in a situation where she does need to work in order to survive. I mean, I just don't like the hypocrisy. So I realized I was rambling, I was all over the place. That's my style. So if you enjoy that, welcome. Please like and subscribe. You know, honestly, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I love your comments. Please keep it respectful. I'm not here to get into a political debate with anybody. You know, I try to keep this stuff as bipartisan as possible because I really don't think that politics is really, I don't think it helps the conversation or anything. I feel like it just divides people even more. And I mean, that's one of the things that I find kind of heartbreaking about this whole, I mean, there's a lot of aspects that are heartbreaking about this whole situation, but I really do think that Charlie Kirk's death could have been an opportunity for the country to unite and to say, okay, the one thing we can agree on is that people should not be killed for expressing their political beliefs. Because if you believe that somebody who disagrees with you should be killed for their political beliefs, then you're also acknowledging that you yourself or people that you do agree with can be killed as well. And you can't have a country thrive if that's the case. I really do feel like this could have been an opportunity to really unite the country and like stop this political tension that's been going on, like this divide that's been happening. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like that's the direction things are going, and I really do think that that's a shame. If there's anything else you want me to analyze or dive into, like, please let me know and leave a comment, because I'd love to hear from you. Any thoughts on this video, please be respectful. I know nowadays it's a lot to ask, but please be respectful. I actually was very thrilled with how respectful a lot of the comments were on my last video, so I very much appreciate that. Thank you. I always try to be as respectful as possible, so I just ask that you are as well. I'm always up for constructive criticism, and you're gonna tell me I use my hands too much, and you're gonna tell me I talk too much, but that's just me. And any requests or any thoughts or anything, please let me know. Leave a comment in the comment section below. Like and subscribe. Honestly, any engagement on this channel really does help to boost it in the algorithm so more people can get this message. And I really do think that the message of trusting your discernment, trusting your intuition, and not just blindly believing what a lot of these content creators are selling you, that includes me. I don't want anybody to blindly believe me. Realizing that what the media is telling you, what you're seeing, what the politicians are telling you, like however you vote, I'm not trying to sway anybody's politics or anybody's religious beliefs or anything, but I just want people to just pay attention. Just keep your eyes open in the world and just pay attention to what's going on, and really just tap into your own inner wisdom. And I just want to see people thrive. And I think that it's really important to do that with like your eyes open and really paying attention to, you know, that not everything is always what it seems. If you are, particularly if you're a woman and you want to learn to tap into your own inner confidence, your own inner strength, I have some guided journals that have been getting some really great feedback. The Recovering Pick Me Girl guided journal and the Dark Feminine Energy guided journal. Just a heads up, if you're new to my content, they are not anti-man, they're not man-hating. They're really about, you know, helping women find their inner confidence. So there's no kind of weird like political agenda or anything like that when it comes along with it. You know, very non-denominational when it comes to, you know, any kind of religion. I'm not pushing any of that stuff on you. It's just very general. But I have gotten a lot of feedback on these books as far as just women being able to like step into your own power and confidence and just really be the best version of yourself. So if you do want to find a relationship, great. If you want to just be able to stand on your own 2 feet, great too. They're both available on Amazon. Details are in the description box below, along with links to all my social media accounts. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time.